All right, mates, welcome back to JL Scott Fishing and Eats. Hope everybody's doing well. Had a question from a subscriber on jigs for the Upper Potomac, as well as the differences between fishing the Tidal Potomac, which is really on fire the last week or so as well, and the Upper Potomac. And a lot of that has to do with your differentiation between fishing for largemouth bass and fishing for smallmouth bass. And while in the fall, there are a lot of similarities. There are also some differences. And the biggest difference has been over the years, because you have so much grass in the Tidal Potomac that comes into play throughout the seasons, okay, than you've had in the Potomac the last few years, with this year being the exception because of all the flooding that's happened, since 18, so before 18 and then the big one in 2018. They kind of took a lot of the grass. The grass is taking years and years and years to come back. So there hasn't really been that grass influence in terms of the grass dying out end of summer into fall as much as the Tidal. So it's actually becomes a little bit more predictable in the Upper Potomac in terms of what the Smallies are going to relate to. In the fall, I just did a video on, check out one of the updates on the Upper Potomac. You don't really have the docks. You don't really have these things in the upper, in the river predominantly that you may have in the creeks, in the tribs of the Tidal Potomac, as well as the upper bay and the tribs that enter the upper bay. So you've got a lot of docks and a lot of all that city structure that you're not going to find on the Upper Potomac for the most part in terms of the stretches of miles that you're talking about. So it's a little bit different. The fish are completely different. The size fish, obviously. But when you're talking about the Tidal right now, obviously right now, the crankbait is crazy. But also the jig bite is starting to obviously come into play. And I talked about it in a previous video. Use your crankbait as your search bait to find those fish. And then change up to your jig to get to upgrade your size. Is a really good plan. It's a pretty simple strategy, but it does tend to work. And again, I will tell you this: a lot of people sleep on a lot of these techniques, and you don't hear a lot about a lot of these techniques, because there's no tournaments going on, really. Okay, you just had Gunnersville, MLS, Toyota Series Championships over with now. I think, most of the tournaments you're going to find are going to be down south, like where it's warmer, right? And so predominantly there's not nearly as many tournaments in the fall as there is in spring and summer. So a lot of people struggle fall fishing because their resources aren't really there for them to figure out as much as, like, say, summer and spring, where you can just follow anglers, channels, predominantly, patterns, translate them to where you are. But then you go out in the fall, it's a beautiful day. Like here, it's 78 degrees, okay, in November in D.C., the D.C. region, okay? We call it the DMV. That's the District, Maryland, and Virginia. 78 degrees, like in November. So it's like, I'll just go fish it like I'm fishing when it's 78 degrees in the summertime. Doesn't really work that way because the water clarity is different and the water temperatures are different. But it's still really good to get that crankbait down and to locate your fish, because doesn't matter whether it's largemouth or smallmouth, but especially smallmouth, they're going to be relating tighter to the bottom. Especially the shallower the water is, right? Because they can't really suspend. You're not gonna find fish suspending. Okay. Now you will in the Tidal Potomac in a lot of the deeper areas, but in the Upper Potomac right now we're looking at 2.8 feet at Edwards Ferry, 1 foot at Pointer Rocks, 2.6 at Little Falls, and about a foot, 1.8 feet at Dam 2. Okay, above and below Dam 2, from Seneca Landing to Pennyfield. Okay, so they're not suspending. Okay, they're staying tighter to the bottom for thermals. And that's why when you locate them, you may be able to pull them up on that crankbait, But that's why when you locate them, you want to opt for your jig presentations, okay? Now, I've said this before when I talk to people. If you're fishing the Tidal Potomac, you are more than good to go with this presentation. Trailer, little bigger profile. Fish tend to be bigger, okay, in the Tidal, and the bait fish tend to be bigger in the Tidal, okay? And so, you know, you can still get this presentation. You can also opt up for a swim bait paddle tail if you want. Still, again, low light conditions, okay, in the fall compared to the summer, compared to the spring, okay? We've just turned clocks back. You know what's going to happen in the early morning or late because of our adjustment, right, in terms of what we're doing. Fish aren't really adjusting. They're still going to be feeding up before that sun comes up, okay? So what colors you want to opt to are going to be your chartreuses and your reds, because that's what the fish are going to see, okay? And so always keep that in mind, all right? So you can go with a chartreuse. Again, a lot of people ask me about, a standard. Here's a standard jig, okay? Skirt. You can use silicone, rubber, any of that stuff. You can have your bait maker make them up. Obviously, soft plastic. Here, the difference is the introduction of hair, okay? So it's colored hair and the hair that you want. So like a hair jig, okay? It's just a little bit different way to change the profile, okay? Now, in our fishery, our tidal fishery, and even the upper bay, we've got the influence of crab, okay? So not just crawl and crayfish species that we have in our rivers that dump down into the tidal. We also have blue crab. We also have crab species, right? And so that's where you can go a little bit off of the chartreuse and the red, and you can go with blue. Okay? So again, just changing it up. Again, same jig, just two different hair presentations, okay, with your black and blue. Black and blue is a primary color that works year-round in the tidal Potomac. It is not as effective in the upper Potomac. Largemouth bass, smallmouth bass. The colors that tend to be more productive in the upper Potomac tend to be your green pumpkin pattern, brown pattern, a little bit of green, okay? Little bit shiner-esque minnow fathead, okay? Kind of like matching the forage. Forage don't tend to be as big down there, as, okay, in terms of bait fish, as you find river herring, okay? You can combo in the tidal if you want to combo with the upper Potomac in terms of the crawl and go with a blue with a pumpkin color trailer, not a black and blue. See that? These are different things that you can do. Now, obviously, the profile on these baits are pretty big. They tend to be more suitable for the tidal Potomac, okay? But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't translate what you learn on the tidal to the upper, okay, for the smallies. You just need to downsize because you want to match that forage size, right? There's no doubt you can catch a big one on a larger style swim bait, okay, a 4 or 5 inch swim bait with a jig head. You can, okay, but a numbers game, you want to downsize. You want to go with the smaller jig presentations, okay, because it's closer related to the size forage they're used to seeing, okay. And you remember, you're looking at a 13 to 14 inch smallmouth bass primarily due to our spawning class's failure, okay? It's not to say there's not 15s and 18s, okay? There are. They're just a smaller population. And then the 19s are even smaller, okay? Because a lot of them didn't last. Those are the ones that have made it through these floods, okay? So that's a great small compact profile. Okay, really soft plastic plastisol here to where this thing's got a lot of action, okay? Even in colder water, if it's smaller, you know, you still want there to be a little action, okay? So there you got the green, and there you got the red, okay? Again, conal, eyesight, bass, low light conditions in the fall, they're going to be hypersensitive to green and red. But they're also on the prowl, okay, looking for any and feeding up as the water temperatures drop for anything that even remotely looks like crawl, okay, because a crawl is a protein-centric, boom, meal for them. Put on calories. They will take the crawl 9 times out of 10, okay, this time of year. When you locate the fish, you want to make sure that you have at least something with a crawl pattern. Crawl crank, crawl jig, okay, because they are going to eat it, okay? And so then that becomes an easier determination of going with the browns, the green pumpkin orange, and more crawl type patterns, okay, in the upper Potomac. And it also, you can do that for a lower Potomac. There's nothing wrong with downsizing in the Tidal either. For easy meals for these, you're just going to be finding them in different areas. You're going to be finding smallmouth right now roaming. They are roaming in 2 feet of water. They're searching, transitioning areas, and they will move 1 to 1.5 miles, okay, in an area this time of year to locate food to feed on. Bass are going to be less in terms of that, in terms of transitions, like movements now. They've already moved their first transition for fall transition. So now they're focused in on the areas of where they are. They're not roaming nearly as much as the smallies are. And so that's why it's a big deal for smallie anglers to cover water quickly to locate. And then once you locate, then go into your arsenal of baits to dial it down and make sure that you got a shot at getting the big uns. The big uns are going to be biting. They traditionally do not bite between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. a lot of times in the upper Potomac. Doesn't mean you're not going to find a story of someone catching a 19 or an 18, okay, in the summertime. But usually in the fall is when you catch the 17 and a halves and up, because they understand they need to feed up. They're going to be a little bit more courageous. They're going to be moving away from shallow cover areas and transitioning into larger areas to locate forage resources for them to fatten up for the fall. So that's why you've got to cover a lot of water in the upper Potomac or the Allegheny or the Susquehanna. You've got to cover a lot of water, okay? That's why I think you start with a crankbait first, because you can cover a lot of water. Remember, get that crankbait down. They're relating to the thermals. Always remember that. Always remember that if you're putting on an extra layer to go fishing because of the aromatic temperature, the water temperature is also going to be impacted. And those fish want to relate to thermal, rock, river composition, structure that holds heat for them, that they can move to and align and adjacent to, and then go out and feed and come back to. You can catch them in those transitioning moves from structure to deeper water, from structure to deeper water. Okay, so when you find that hole that's 3 feet right now, when most of the river is 1.5 feet, 9 times out of 10 you're going to find fish. It's just a matter of how many fish are going to be in that deeper pool area. Okay, and how much forage, how adjacent they are to a seam of the river coming down, how adjacent they are to where bait fish will be, is really the indicator as to what the numbers are going to be. But so look for that, okay? I'm kind of like pulled back now. If we were to get some rain this weekend, we're supposed to, but if it gets to be enough rain to where we're going to go from 2 feet, 1.5 to 2 feet back to 3 feet, or maybe 3.5 feet, and we see that rise in water, I would probably go back to a spinnerbait, even though it's the fall. Inline spinner or spinnerbait. But if not, we've been consistent. The water temperature's been consistent now. Okay, remember, we're 78 degrees outside DC, but we're going to fall to below 60 by the end of the week. So you got a temperature change, okay? With it, it's bringing rain. So we could see an increase in the water levels. We also could see a further decrease in the water temperatures, depending on what's happening to the water, how cold it is up north, what's happening up north, and the water that's coming down the river. So just an update on jigs for the Potomac fishery. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. You can reach out to me, JL Scott Fishing and Eats on Facebook. I am also on TikTok. I appreciate the love, appreciate everybody. I think we got over 24,000 subscribers now on YouTube, so that's crazy. Never in my wildest dreams I think the channel would grow to 24,000 subscribers in a year. That's nuts. But again, always hit me up with any content suggestions, or if you want to go fishing, hit me up in the DMV. So, it doesn't matter whether you're fishing from a canoe, a kayak, bank fishing, wade fishing, hit me up. We'll figure it out. It's always great to be out on the water with new folks and people that are just willing to do a little bit more work in terms of knowledge base, being out on the river, reading the rivers, understanding the river, and figuring those things out, where you don't need to invest $1,000 in electronics if you're a river fisherman, okay? And you're fishing locally in your local river, or in the Mid-Atlantic region, where if you do, God bless you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you go into your impoundment, your deep water lake, your reservoir, and you want to locate things, got a part with $500 to $1,000, or these people that are getting live scope and Panoptic. So God bless them. But, it all comes down to you don't have to go that route. You spend some time on the water. The more time you spend, the more you learn reading rivers, reading the fish, understanding the habitat, understanding the ecosystem, following channels like this, following other channels that are more like knowledge, information, resource based, as opposed to just watching guys catch fish all day. That's great. I do that all the time. I watch guys catch fish. But sometimes you also want to figure out, what's going on with the fish during each of these seasons and how you can attack the river in a way to get you there either before they come, or you come up on them because you know where they're going to be, and you ambush them in the same way they're looking to ambush their forage species. So that's what it's about. Fall fishing. I'm telling you what, the big ones are there. The big ones are to be had. You're seeing reports all over the region of big and smallies being caught, because that's the time of the year the big ones come out. So appreciate the love. Again, comment in the comment section if you want me to cover anything, or if you want a one-on-one conversation with me. Hit me up on Messenger on JL Scott Fishing. We'll get together on the phone, do a call, whatever you want. If you have any questions, about getting you on fish. All right, mates.